What has been so far in your career as an educator? What has been the most difficult part of working with these exceptional kids?
I think if you ask any educator, they'll tell you a very similar thing. We go to work, and I say this in all my IEP meetings. I go to work every day to serve students and their families. And I think every educator that is there for the right reasons would say the same thing. The number one issue that I have seen is the bureaucracy and the politics of public education.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Exceptional Stories and the People Who Live Them. Your host is Steve Dover, a special needs advocate and father of 2 special needs sons. This is a faith-based, in-depth conversation-styled podcast with and for parents of special needs children. This podcast will let you have a front row seat to hear how they do it, why they do it, and what you can learn from their experiences as they share their exceptional stories. Let's get started.
Welcome to another inspiring episode of Exceptional Stories and the People Who Live Them. I'm your host, Steve Dover, and today we have an extraordinary guest, Dustin Phillips. Dustin's story is rooted in his deep love and connection with his older brother, Chad, who was born with Down syndrome. This familial bond ignited Dustin's lifelong commitment to making a difference in the lives of individuals with exceptional needs. As a special education teacher, he works tirelessly to support children who have faced trauma, providing them with the care, understanding, and education they need to thrive. Dustin's involvement with the Helen Keller Institute is another testament to his dedication. He spearheads the incredible Camp Courage, a Helen Keller Experience, a program designed to empower young students with visual and/or hearing impairments. This transformative 3-day camp fosters confidence, lasting connections, and a vision to the future, leaving a lasting mark on the lives of these young participants. But that's not all. Dustin is also deeply engaged with Night to Shine, an unforgettable prom night experience that radiates the love and inclusion for people with special needs. Through this event, individuals aged 14 and older are given a chance to shine, dance, and celebrate life with the warmth of community and acceptance. In addition to his educational and advocacy work, Dustin is turning his dreams into reality with the Chadwick Center. This brand new event venue is being developed in honor of his beloved brother Chad. The Chadwick Center stands out as a place of celebration, unity, and accessibility. It's designed to be an inclusive and accommodating to individuals with disabilities, ensuring that everyone can participate fully and feel embraced. Dustin's goal is to create a hub where more services will be offered to the exceptional needs community and their families, with plans to open to the public in the fall of 2024. Dustin's dedication to promoting inclusivity, accessibility, and a brighter future for individuals with exceptional needs is a story that will touch your heart and inspire you. So stay tuned as we delve deeper into his exceptional journey and the impact he's making in this week's episode. All right, my guest today is Dustin Phillips, and glad to have you on the show, Dustin. Glad we was able to get you on here. I'm looking forward to hearing your story today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
We talked a little bit before we started, and there's a lot of things we need to cover of what you're doing present day for parents of special needs kids and special needs education and all that. But I feel pretty sure that you would not be involved in any of this if it had not been for a very special person in your life, your brother Chad. Let's lay some groundwork here and tell all the listeners about Chad and what his life is like and how that inspired you, if you would.
Absolutely. So Chad is my older brother, and he has Down syndrome. So Chad is 5.5 years older than I am. So Chad is turning 32 next month, and next month would be November. And, being the little brother, there's what's called the sibling effect. And so some people have the sibling effect that's very positive, and some have it that's very negative. And so being able to sit down and analyze that has really helped shape, what impact do I want to make on our world and around the community, based on our experiences of being a sibling. But to give you some context about Chad, his testimony is not one that he can always tell himself. And so it's very important for these podcasts like this, to be able to showcase those testimonies of people that can't always tell their own story.
Yeah, well, let's do that. Let's do that.
So, the best way I can explain it is my mom and dad were very young when they had my brother. They were 15, 16 years old. They were in high school. It's the early 90s. And when Chad was born, he was born called a mongoloid. And I'm sure there's a lot of listeners that may actually know what that terminology is, but that just shows how much we've evolved with how we communicate about individuals with exceptionalities.
Right.
And they told my parents at a young age, like, hey, he's never going to walk. He's never going to talk. He's not going to be functional in society. Like, you need to consider alternate plans for him. And then they also said that he might not even live to be a day old once he was born. And so to begin, Chad's journey in this life started off with everybody doubting his capabilities. And so I think when we talk about people with exceptional needs, it's very common. And, my parents, they persevered. And so you have to give a lot of credit to them. And I know there's a lot of parents out here that are trying to navigate that world. And so you have two teenagers themselves, they're kids, and they're trying to navigate, how do I take care of a child that I know nothing about? I know nothing about exceptional needs. And so, they really took life by the horns and they ran with it. Growing up, I remember I was in kindergarten. My brother was in fourth grade. I do know that he was in public education at a local school district around here. And a member of the IEP team actually told my mom not to send Chad to school. And when my mom asked questions, it was because Chad was actually being physically abused in the classroom by a paraprofessional. A place that you find refuge in, and a place that, you send your child to be safe and to be educated, was actually a place of harm for him. Wow. And at the time, Chad was nonverbal. Chad stayed nonverbal until he was about in the 8th grade. So, fourth grade to 8th grade, that's a huge difference. And so Chad couldn't come home and tell us what's going on. Again, I was in kindergarten, but I still can vividly remember those days. I've seen my parents struggle through that. Going through, when I was about 12, 13 years old, we were part of a local church in the area. And, there was some things that happened in the church that, you take a step back and you think, how can church people do this to people with exceptional needs? Yeah. It can happen. And so parents along the way, they've had to learn, you can't be just trusting of everybody just because they care. You've got to be able to discern people and to discern spirits and to trust your gut. And so Chad has went through some adversity in his life on top of just having an exceptional need that's really laid the groundwork for me wanting to work in special education. And, I'm proud to say, Chad actually got into a school where he was very loved. He was very cared for. He has hearing aids now. So his speech has gotten much better. His language skills are thriving. Chad is very functioning. He's able to stay at home independently with supports in the home, of course. Sure. But he can use his cell phone. He's a very intelligent young man, but has been stumbling blocks along the way, but he's persevered. But it's also looking back at my parents and seeing how they've persevered and how they've learned and grown through that. And so, Chad's experiences have shown me, hey, I want to make a difference. I want to go into education to, number one, set the standard high, because I know children can excel when the standards are high. But then I also be that person that sits on an IEP team, and I want the parents that I get the privilege of serving with to know that when your child is in my care, I see your child as who they are, and I wouldn't do anything I wouldn't want done to my own sibling. Right. So I really want to bridge that, especially in the public education sector, because there is a lot of mistrust in public education, specifically here in the South. A lot of people, when you look at the political climate, it's like, oh, what can we trust? What can we not? There's division there. And so, my brother's experiences has really shaped that and how I become an educator and how I make that impact in my community.
What area of special education are you in, or is it elementary level, or where are you at?
Yeah. So my undergraduate degree is in K-6 elementary ed, and it's K-6 special ed. My master's degree is K-12 special ed, and then I also have an administrative degree. I currently teach in a K-6 behavioral special education unit. I work with children that exhibit unsafe behaviors, either physically or emotionally. I have a lot of students that have trauma, so they've experienced things and they don't know how to channel that appropriately. So we work on getting them the counseling services and doing trauma informed responses, because we want to make sure that we're being proactive in addressing these behaviors at the root cause rather than being reactive and just providing punishment.
Right. And I'm sure you mentioned trauma. I'm sure you see a lot of kids that they go through trauma at home because, not indicating that your parents did, but you said your parents became parents at a young age and had to deal with something that was totally foreign to them, scary to them, I'm sure. And it appears that they handled everything right, but there's parents out there that don't, and that puts trauma on those kids on top of what other challenges or things they may be facing. So you see that as the teacher as well, right?
Absolutely. I see it very often. I mean, just to give you a scenario, think about a mother that's a single mom and she's having to navigate how is she going to take care of her child? Who's going to watch her child, while she's working to provide ends meet? There are so many different variables that can go on in just that one scenario that we see on a daily basis, even with typical developing children, much less those exceptional needs.
Right.
And so trauma it doesn't discriminate on the basis of exceptionality, but it seems to happen more often in children with exceptional needs because they're, a lot of people look at it as, are they a credible source, or can they tell on the adult or the other individual? It may be another child that's creating some of that trauma.
Right.
You would hope that parents are making the best decision for their children. But sometimes parents are having to make a decision, do I work and make ends meet, or do I stay at home and not provide? And, there's a lot of different factors that go into it, but we're seeing it more and more in the education system today.
I had a couple of Facebook discussions with some parents today. Funny you should mention that. One of the moms, she is struggling because she is perceived as the bad parent or the tough parent because of the decisions that she's having to make because of the situation that she's in. And a lot of parents feel that way. We were the parents to two special needs kids and have one special needs grandson. And I remember what those challenges were like. And you feel like you don't have any backup. And a lot of times you have to make some tough decisions. And but it's good to know that there's folks like yourself in the school system that will support those parents because a lot of times the school system is not there to support them, and you don't see that a lot. So that's a benefit there, and I appreciate you being that support in the system. What has been so far in your career as an educator? What has been the most difficult part of working with these exceptional kids?
I think if you ask any educator, they'll tell you a very similar thing. We go to work, and I say this in all my IEP meetings, I go to work every day to serve students and their families. And I think every educator that is there for the right reasons would say the same thing. The number one issue that I have seen is the bureaucracy and the politics of public education. I think that's what ties our hands the most, because a lot of times we see what students need, but there's a long drawn out process before we can get those services, because we've got to document that we've exhausted every avenue before we get them what they absolutely need. As a teacher, I'll be upfront with you. IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, is not fully funded. It has never been fully funded. And so we have a lot of things that we as advocates and we as parents and we as siblings and we as teachers and administrators, like we all want to provide better for these students with exceptional needs. But then we're balancing that politics of, okay, well, if I give in this area, where am I going to have to take from? Because that's exactly how public education is. It's a give and take system, sadly. And so, as a teacher, as a person that really wants to empower families, the number one thing always goes back to politics and funding and the bureaucracy of education.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, Exceptional Stories family. We've got something very exciting to share. We want to put the spotlight on you. If you're a special needs parent or caregiver, we want to hear your questions for an upcoming Q&A episode. Send in your questions via email to exceptionalstoriespodcast@gmail.com or leave us a 90-second voice message at speakpipe.com/exceptionalstoriespodcast. We're diving deep into the most common pain points faced by special needs parents, and your input will shape this crucial conversation. I can't wait to hear from you. Let's make this Q&A episode truly exceptional. What, on the flip side of that coin, what has been the most rewarding so far? Can you give an example of a situation where it might have seemed hopeless or something, but you were able to work through that and see results?
Yeah, so I see that every day in my classroom, and when I sit down and talk with families, especially with me being behavior unit, I'm normally receiving students that has exhibited a lot of physical behaviors. They've been aggressive towards peers or other adults, and then they're coming to me, and I'm kind of like the person that's supposed to bring change or bring,
Right.
progress. Okay. And so a lot of times when I receive students in my classroom, there's already been heated discussions leading up to me. There's always been maybe an attorney or a lawyer, an advocate. Maybe there's just high tensions with the IEP team in general because there's just a lot going on. It's never easy as a parent to receive news that your child is creating a disruptive learning environment. It's never easy to hear that. And so, one of the things that I always tell parents in my IEP meetings, and I refer it back to the Helen Keller Experience. A lot of times when you hear the story of Helen Keller, you hear a child that's just out of control, doesn't know how to communicate, she's been enabled. And then you have the Annie Sullivan that comes in and provides, corrective discipline, provides structure, provides an opportunity and an environment where learning can happen, and then continues to build on that. And so, we wouldn't have a Helen Keller without the Annie Sullivan. And so I see that every day in my classroom because, when we hold students to higher standards and we give them the supports that they need to be able to be successful in their least restrictive environment, we can see the potential that they can have long term. And so I see that on a daily basis. But to give you another scenario, I sat in an IEP meeting the other day. And, like I said, tensions are typically high once I receive the student. Okay. And I sat down in this IEP meeting, and a child that I have, he's honestly phenomenal. That's the best word to use for him. And I always like to showcase the joy that he brings to my day when I talk to his parents, and I give daily updates. And the mother just stopped me in the middle of an IEP meeting the other day, and she said, "I want you to know that when my child came," she said, "I was looking forward to what he was going to gain from this experience with you." She said, "I never realized what you were going to gain from your experience with him. And thank you for teaching me to look from that perspective." Because this is a partnership, and I'm there to learn from their child and from them as a family, just as much as they're there to learn from me to support their child and their family. And so it's truly a beautiful collaboration. But collaboration happens when we create an environment where we can talk about the strengths and the weaknesses at the same time. Right. And so the beauty of my job is being able to really showcase that. And I think my sibling perspective helps in that scenario.
I agree with that 100%. Your love and passion for this goes outside the classroom. You're involved in many volunteer aspects. with these kids. And matter of fact, when I reached out to you, you were you were at a camp that you work with. The first time I reached out to you about being on the podcast, tell us a little bit about some of the outside the classroom activities that you're involved in and how those are going.
Yeah, absolutely. So the camp that you're referring to is actually Camp Courage, and that's providing a Helen Keller experience. We do it at Ivy Green, which is in Tuscumbia, Alabama, which is not too far from where I live. I live in what's called the Shoals, which is in Alabama. So I live in Florence, and Helen Keller's birthplace is there. And so what we do is we bring individuals between the ages of 9 and 12. So typically your 4th through 6th grade kiddos to Ivy Green to experience that Helen Keller experience. And then we give UNA students the opportunity to get that Annie Sullivan experience. Mm-hmm. So you have UNA pre-service teachers that are coming to be camp counselors, and then you have children who are hard of hearing, deaf, or visually impaired that are getting the opportunity to be there.
Right.
And when you look at that population, typically they're less than 1%, or they might be the only one of their school. Mm-hmm. And so this gives them the opportunity to come from around the United States to get this experience and to see other people who may have hearing aids or who may have cochlear implants or, who may have a cane. There's different ways. But I got involved with that when I was in college. I fell in love with it. Now I am a fellow, a Helen Keller fellow. And what we do is we help train those UNA college students to be able to work with these individuals. So I've been doing that for about 5 years. So that's something I always look forward to. It refuels my spirit and reminds me why I do the job that I do. Because some days working in the behavior unit can get tough. Like you lose focus because of the tough days. Outside of that, I'm the coordinator for Not to Shine Shoals. I started out in a college. It was 2015 when it initially started worldwide with the Tim Tebow Foundation. I started as a volunteer with a parking team. I moved to becoming a buddy. Then I became a co-coordinator with guest registration, and now I run the whole thing. And so this is my 2nd year to do that. So we host an exceptional needs prom for children 14 all the way up to whatever age they can qualify for. So we had last year in their 80s. And so we give them a prom-like experience. We roll out the red carpet for them, and we just really show God's love, and we embrace this community, and we want to showcase the value that they bring. Mm-hmm. But when I host these events, I always like to try to use it as an educational opportunity to show the community, how can we be more inclusive? How can you go back and take what you're learning from this event and make your experience even stronger in your churches, your organizations, your schools, your universities? I want to really focus on discipleship. This stuff isn't for me to hold on to. It's for me to teach you and give you the resources so that you can go and apply. And so that's the way I look at how we lead Not to Shine. But it is a wonderful program. I'm very proud of it. Last year, we had over 600 people in attendance, and my goal is to continue that year after year. And so here in the Shoals, this will be our 8th year to host it. Mm-hmm. Worldwide, it's year 10. And then, just the other night on Tuesday night, I was coaching my brother's ball game. We have a therapy league team. So that's where our exceptional needs, adults and children alike, they have different games on different nights. But we play adaptive baseball. So that was very fun. That's one of the things I'm involved in. I'm also involved in the Arc of the Shoals, which is a program for adults with intellectual disabilities. So, when children age out at the age of 21 from public education, where do they go next? And so one of those is the Medicaid waiver. And so I'm very closely affiliated with our local ARC. I'm actually the president of that organization. And, my brother doesn't benefit from going there. I don't know if he will ever get the opportunity to do their community day program or their residential because of how the Medicaid waiver is set up. But just because he doesn't attend doesn't mean that I can't have a seat at that table to help other families that do rely on that service. So I'm very adamant about, even if it doesn't benefit Chad, I want to make sure that I use my knowledge and the experiences that I've been trusted with to help lead other people.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Let's take a quick break. And then when we come back, I want to wrap up with you telling the folks about something. All of this is close to your heart. This is your life. You've devoted your life to all this that we've talked about. But there's something that you're working on that I think will be a benefit and a blessing to the folks that are listening. I want us to talk about that when we come back. We'll be back here in just a minute with Dustin Phillips on exceptional stories and the people who live them.
We hope you are enjoying this week's episode of Exceptional Stories and the People Who Live Them. If you would like to support our podcast to help it improve and be heard around the world, we have created a way you can do just that. Go to the podcast website at exceptionalstoriespodcast.com and click the support button on the homepage. For as little as $3 per month, you can help keep this podcast available. There will be no pressure, and you can stop anytime you choose. So go to the show website now, exceptionalstoriespodcast.com, and click the support button now to help. We look forward to hearing from you soon.
All right, we are back for the wrap-up here on Exceptional Stories and the People Who Live Them. You've been listening to my guest, Dustin Phillips, and he is a busy young man. He was inspired at an early age by his older brother, Chad, who has Down syndrome, and that inspired him to become a special education teacher. And moving on from that, just a life devoted to helping what you refer to, and it's a term I'm going to try to train myself to start using too, exceptional needs. I like that because that's got such a positive outlook on it. But before we went to break, there's something that you're involved with, and I'm going to let you take the wheel and just tell about it, because I have purposely not looked into this because I wanted to hear it directly from you. But you're involved in something that was inspired by Chad as well, that I think is going to affect and impact everybody. So tell us about that and where you're at in that process.
Absolutely. So I'm in the process of creating a foundation, basically is the way I want to use it, a hub for families called the Chadwick Center. So my brother's name is Chadwick Allen. So the Chadwick Center is obviously named after him. It's something to continue to honor him and to refer back to of why we're going to do this. When I was in high school, I remember, in high school, they give you this thing like, where are you going to be in 10 years? Like that's a writing prompt you're doing like your English class. And I said, my goal is to open a foundation called the Chadwick Center. Like, that's what I want to do. I get into college. I knew I was going to do special education. My professors would do the same thing. What's your goal? And I tell them, in 5 years after teaching, I'm going to go and I'm going to open up a facility called the Chadwick Center. And then I got into teaching. And I'll be honest with you, when you get in the world of teaching, your life drastically changes. And I always had this idea, like, I'm going to open the Chadwick Center, but it felt like it was getting further and further away. And I'm on year 5 of teaching. And over the summer, I have a mentor who I love. She's amazing. Her name is Dr. Trudy Abel. She called me and she said, Dustin, it's time that you quit waiting for the right moment and you just finally build what you were destined to build. You've talked about it ever since I've known you. It's time that you actually take that leap of faith. And so on that early June morning, I made sure to talk to my mom and dad, and I said, I'm ready to start the Chadwick Center. And so that's just a few months ago, actually. And my parents are on board, and we're making the process of creating a hub. And that's the way I want to use it. It's a hub for families. It's going to evolve over time, but the way it's going to start is basically it's a blank canvas, and it's going to be a space that is truly accessible for all individuals, because when we make things accessible for one, we actually make it accessible for all. That's the way accommodations work.
Right.
And so, my initial goal was to create like a day program. When I was in high school and early college, it's to create a day program. So people like my brother who aren't eligible for services under the Medicaid waiver would have a place to go. But that was very limited in scope. And so now that I've actually been through education and my experiences with the Arc of the Shoals and stuff, there's a greater need out there. And the best way to do it is to create the space where whatever it needs to be, it can morph into that. And so with the Chadwick Center, I want it to be an open floor plan. I want it to just be a place that can easily be maneuvered or manipulated to serve the community how it needs to be served in that moment. So one of the things that I want to see through it is respite nights. I want to be able to offer our community an opportunity to say, hey, I'm a mom and a dad. I haven't had a date in 32 years.
Yes.
And we have trained staff there that we can, offer a movie night for our exceptional community members, and then their parents can go have a date and trust it. I also want it to be a place where early intervention can happen. So that way, if you have a child birth to 3 years old that might need services. The Chadwick Center could be a space that could be reserved out to be able to provide those early intervention services. Let's say your child needs counseling services for trauma behaviors. We can have that space, and it can become a counseling session for kids, or it can be an open conversation for parents that are in the grieving process or understanding process. It's an open table discussion for them. Maybe it's just to host a thing like Night to Shine. Hey, we want to offer a Halloween ball, and we can just a night where they can come and enjoy and be included with, college students and our community members of exceptional needs. And we just host events and celebrate the value that they have. So my goal for the Chadwick Center is to create just a blank space, and whatever it needs to be, that's what it's going to become. And so we have started that process. We broke ground on it. The building is up. The electricity has been connected. The plumbing has been roughed in. Now we have to actually start making it beautiful. Because that's what this is going to become. It's going to be a beautiful staple in this community. It's going to be a place where everyone is valued, everyone is welcome. It's a learning opportunity. It'll be an educational facility, a counseling facility. Again, it's going to be whatever we need it to be. But my goal is to get that up and running by 2024. So fall of 2024 is my goal. And, I might still be in teaching in the fall of 2024. But respectfully, I hope and pray that I can be running this full time and just really providing a space for you have questions about what to do with your kid. You can go to the Chadwick Center and you can get information from early intervention to, hey, I need to get connected to know, do I need to get guardianship for my child that's about to turn 19? Or, what do I do in this scenario when they're 39 years old and I'm not able to take care of them anymore? Like, I really want it to be a hub for all families across the shoals.
Right. Well, that's remarkable. And I look forward to watching the progress on that, watching it build. And I'm glad to know you've already got the building, already got the site. And that right now, that's the easy part. Now you got to get to work.
The hard part is coming. And I will tell you, this is something that I firmly believe in. I will be upfront with it. I haven't accepted any, donations towards the project yet. It's one of those that I want to be very intentional with how we do it. And so, this is currently being personally financed through myself and through my dad. So every dollar that I'm putting in, my dad is actually matching right now. Wow. And so that shows you that this is our mission. My parents are small business owners, but they've been in business since 2005. That was one of those things that they had to decide, when I open a business, like, I'm going to be home to take care of my child when he becomes an adult and isn't eligible for public education anymore. So they have that business. But, I really see this being the way that we shift our mindset to serve our community. And so my dad and my mom are so supportive of this mission. And, like I said, right now it's all personally financed. We've probably put in over 80,000 in the last couple months. It's an expensive project, but it's a project that's worth doing. And I know that the seed that we're planting right now will continue to grow. It will blossom. It will serve the community, because we're not doing this to make a profit. We're doing this to be a service. And like I said earlier, this is for me to be able to disciple other people. And I think that's exactly what the Chadwick Center is going to be. It's going to be like a ministry.
Well, that's awesome. I was interviewing a parent just a few weeks ago, and he brought a poem or an essay to my attention. Welcome to Holland. I don't know if you've heard that, but it's about this traveler that has planned exhaustively for this trip to Italy. They bought tour guides. They got the maps. They bought the clothing for it. They knew exactly what they wanted to do. And then when they got on the train, when the train stopped, the conductor came back and said, "Welcome to Holland." So their trip, they ended up in a place that they never thought they would be. They weren't prepared to be there, but yet they got to see the tulips growing in Holland. They got to see the windmills. So the moral of that story is every destination has its good in it. And while you were telling that story and talking about your parents' involvement in it, I couldn't help but think of them at 15, 16 years old. They're getting ready to go to Italy. They're about to have, they're planned this, they planned this, and then all of a sudden they end up in a totally different destination. But yet, look at it 32 years later, they're involved in something that's going to blossom in so many lives and be such a foundation in so many lives. So that's great. My hat's off to you guys, and hats off to them for that. As we wrap up here, we got just a few more minutes. I didn't send a pre-list of questions out. I kind of touched on some topics with you that I wanted to discuss because I knew our time would be limited. But lastly here, is there a question that you wanted me to ask you that I did not ask? And if it is, what is that question?
Honestly, we've talked about quite a bit. There's not a question just off the top of my head other than I have a question that I'd like to ask you is what created the opportunity for you to have this podcast? Because I honestly don't know that yet.
Well, as I said earlier, my wife and I are parents to two special needs children. Our youngest one passed away at 13. He had a genetic disorder, a chromosomal duplication. And from that, just over the last 8 years, we've been connected with other parents. Our oldest son has Asperger's, but he's high functioning. He holds a job. He's very involved. But over the last about 6 or 8 months, I started feeling like there were parents out there that had stories like ours that nobody's ever heard. And I wanted to get those stories out there. I wanted to put those parents up front and let them tell their story. And as the podcast has evolved, I'm now looking at bringing in folks like yourself that work with those parents to give them help, give them hope, give them inspiration, maybe give them some direction in this navigation of these different areas. So it's growing as we speak, but the main drive behind that was we've got a story, and we've been able to help other people with our story. How many other folks out there have that same story or have a story like yours and Chad that can inspire someone else to get out and do something or go that extra day or do that extra activity? And so that's the main drive behind it is we had a story we wanted to tell, and if we've got a story, how many other stories are out there that need to be told?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you doing that because that's how we learn. Is through our stories, through our experiences, and that's how we learn to be better. And so, I always look at it from a different perspective. I can read something all day long, but until it's actually put in front of me and given perspective, I don't understand it and value it. It's kind of like what I was saying earlier with Helen Keller. She knew the whole time when she was fingerspelling into Annie Sullivan's hand, she was fingerspelling doll over and over and over. She didn't understand the value of what she was doing. And so sometimes I think we lose sight of the value of what we're doing until we hear these stories and we hear these testimonies. And
absolutely,
we can make change when we give voices to everybody. That's why they have those voices, is to be able to share these types of things.
Absolutely. Wrapping this up here, if folks wanted to get in touch with you and find out more about what you're doing, maybe with the volunteer camps, the Night to Shine, Camp Courage, or they want to find out more about the Chadwick Center, is there a way that they can reach out to you to where you can have a discussion with them about that?
Absolutely. And I would love if there's any siblings out there that maybe have a negative or a positive experience, I'd love to collaborate with them too, because I think the sibling perspective often goes unnoticed sometimes.
Yeah.
Some kids do get overlooked because of the needs of their siblings. So I totally want to be a support system for those people too. But the best way to reach out to me is through social media. If you want to know more about the Chadwick Center and keep up with the Chadwick Center, you can go to thechadwickcenter.com. That website is still in progress, so it is not fully there, but it gives you links to the Facebook page and the Instagram account. So you can see the progress in real time through photos on that. But thechadwickcenter.com is that website. And then my social media handles for X, which is formerly known as Twitter, and Instagram is @Dud Phillips. So that's @DudPhillips. And then, Facebook is the best place to get connected, and that's Dustin Phillips. And you'll know it's me because you'll see a picture of me and my brother Chad on there. Feel free to friend me or follow me there, because that's where a lot of the progress with everything that I'm involved in. I encourage people, no matter where you are, what state you're in, get plugged into your local organizations. There's so many nonprofits. Even if you don't align with them 100%, there's a nonprofit that does go towards your leanings, and get involved with them. Find a community of people to get engaged with, ask questions, be bold, be ready to advocate, and give yourself the voice that you were given. And so
Absolutely.
That's my number one thing.
Absolutely. Well, Dustin, I appreciate you coming on. We've never met in person, but I look forward to meeting you. And I want to bring you back in the fall of 24 and get a Chadwick Center update. And hopefully we'll have video by then. We could just do a tour or something. But I'll have all of your contact information that you gave. I'll have it in the show notes so folks can reach out to you. And I applaud you for what you're doing. There's a lot of educators out there like you that have this drive and have this desire to make these kids better and make their lives better. And I appreciate you doing that. So glad to have you on here. And I look forward to talking to you again soon. I hope you're blessed. Be blessed.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
All right.
Hey, before we go, I want to thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. If you're the parent of a special needs child and wish to share your story with us, or you know someone we should talk with on the show, send an email to exceptionalstoriespodcast@gmail.com. I also want to invite you to follow us on our social media pages. You can find us on both Facebook and Instagram at Exceptional Stories Podcast. And lastly, if you found this podcast informative and you would like to keep it going, I encourage you to go to our website at www.exceptionalstoriespodcast.com and click on the support button on our homepage. Join us next week as we share another exceptional story.